Did Craigslist and Backpage prevent serial killers from killing prostitutes? Stick around. Welcome back to another episode of Just a Tip with Dr. Vic / Sex Nerd Podcast. My name is Dr. Victoria Hartman. Today we're going to tackle a topic that seems to be one of talking points for our politicians in passing laws such as Sesta Fosta, and I will post a link to that episode at the end of this video discussing Sesta Fosta. And actually on this channel, we've discussed Sesta Fosta quite a few times. And there's a new law that is being proposed that's very similar. And I will make sure to post that in the description below. Let me tackle this because I'm sure you heard my intro and were like, oh my God, what? Okay. There was a paper that was recently published. Let's see. In the Journal of Human Resources. Actually, okay, it was published online on August 11th of this year, but it seems to reference a study that was published originally in November of 2007. And the authors are Scott Cunningham from Baylor University, Gregory D'Angelo from West Virginia University, and John Tripp from Baylor University as well. Now, the title of this paper is called, Did Craigslist Erotic Services Reduce Female Homicide and Rape? Now, I haven't gotten a chance to actually peruse the entire paper. However, their findings are rather interesting, and I will peruse through the paper to pick out why they found what they found. All right. So their results were, or their abstract is, sex workers have historically faced harm from clients. However, sex workers have claimed that internet platforms, such as Craigslist erotic services, reduced that violence. Using the staggered rollout of ERS, and I will define that in a moment, for identification, we find that it is likely that ERS, Craigslist erotic services, reduced female homicides by between 12 and 18%, and reported, they highlight, female rape offenses by between 7 and 9%. We, the authors of this paper, hypothesize that this was due to more transactions occurring indoors, better screening efforts, and more efficient matching. Our results suggest that some internet platforms may mitigate the historical risks sex workers have faced. Now, I understand there's been a movie made about the Craigslist killer. His name was Philip Markoff. There's a film about him, The Curious Case of the Craigslist Killer. Also, Rex Hoyerman was recently arrested for the murder of 3 women. Now, you might be wondering, why am I talking about serial killers in particular when it comes to these platforms? Well, I've been doing research, heavy research on serial killers for my upcoming 2 books. So I'm very immersed in that world right now. So you have, even in recent news, you have a serial killer having been caught. And like I said earlier, you also have the Craigslist killer. So there's some notoriety around these platforms, the Craigslist killer, Backpage, etc. Now, maybe this is a one-off paper. It was issued in volume 58, issue 4, 1st of July, 2023. That's the journal it was published in. like I said, it seems to reference back to the paper done in 2017. There's another paper, and I found several. There was one that was just published a little over a year ago, April 6th, 2022. Negotiated safety, ? Did Backpage.com reduce female homicide rates? The authors of that paper are Samantha Tajadin. She's in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Washington State University, as well as David Mackin. They found similar results. Their abstract states, prior research has associated Craigslist.com and Backpage.com as sources of victimization, which in part resulted in the closure of the erotic services of each respective website. However, research also claims the introduction of Craigslist was associated with a reduction in female homicide rates across 30 large cities. This research acts as a supplemental analysis to Cunningham et al., this particular paper, by analyzing if Backpage.com, considered to be Craigslist's successor, has similar effects on female homicide rates. When including measures of interest in each respective website, the authors find that Backpage is associated with a decrease in homicide rates for women. The purpose of this study is to extend the study conducted by Cunningham et al. Through supplemental analysis to determine the effect of online clearinghouses on female homicide rates, interest measures in Backpage.com, along with the female homicide rates from 120 single city metropolitan and micropolitan areas over 14 years, so 2004 to 2018, were analyzed using multiple regression analyses. The regression analyses show that there is a statistically significant relationship between interest in Backpage and homicide rates for women. The authors find that Backpage is associated with a decrease in homicide rates for women. And that was in the, the Journal for Homicide Studies, or Homicide Studies Journal. So these are not sexological journals. These are criminological journals or human resource journals. So a broad range of researchers from different disciplines and different parts of the country are researching the effect of these websites and how they relate to the homicide rates for women, but also how they might be interpreted in light of this new law that is coming about as a follow-up to Sesta Fosta. Now, the authors in the original paper that I cited from 2017, Cunningham et al., states, although opponents argued that erotic services made prostitutes less safe in these platforms, violence against prostitutes is not unique to Craigslist ERS transactions. Lohman and Fraser, 1995, estimated that a female street prostitute is 60 to 100 times more likely to be murdered than a female non-prostitute. Brewer et al. In 2006 explained, lone perpetrators accounted for the overwhelming majority of prostitute and client homicides. In these data sets, clients committed 57 to 100% of prostitute homicides. Prostitutes committed 86 to 94% of client homicides, and pimps committed 40 to 67% of pimp homicides. Serial killers accounted for more than 1/3 of prostitute victims, and nearly all such serial killers were clients. Further, the modal victim of a serial killer is a female prostitute, as these make up more than 50% of all serial killer victims. And that's cited from Egger, 2003. In light of these risks, careful investigation of whether this technological shock significantly impacted female safety is of prima facie importance. Now, what is the impact on female homicide rates, considering what we've just been made aware of with regard to, especially the number that I was shocked by, that 50% of serial killer victims are prostitutes. ERS would have increased violence against women if Craigslist was either more dangerous in the alternative or the incidence of violence was simply a function of the size of the market. But the fact that prostitutes voluntarily selected into Craigslist clearinghouse suggests that there was some reduction in cost. This reduction in cost may be the perceived reduction in risk and increased safety. Many prostitutes claim that Craigslist enabled them to better screen new clients, which could have reduced prostitute violence. But prior to this study, such claims were purely anecdotal. Now let's discuss the contrast to that, which is legal prostitution, such as here in Nevada. There are 19 legal brothels spread over 7 Nevada counties as of this year in February. And for those of you who don't know, there are licensed houses of prostitution in counties with populations that do not exceed 700,000. And we have an exhibit in the Erotic Heritage Museum highlighting these numbers. Sex workers in the legal houses of prostitution here in Nevada, they have to register with the local county sheriff. They receive regular health checks. They pay federal income taxes and report their earnings to the IRS. Condoms are mandatory for oral and sexual intercourse. Brothels must be licensed and registered with the local county sheriff. According to the Nevada Brothel Association, only 10% of the prostitution that occurs in Nevada is legal. 90% of Nevada's illegal prostitution takes place in Las Vegas, where prostitution is prohibited. In 2016, the FBI collected data on reported rape cases in Elko County, Lyon County, and Douglas County, Nevada. 3 areas that are similarly sized population-wise. The findings show that in Elko County, where prostitution is legal, the number of reported rapes in 2016 stood at 0. In Lyon County, during the same period, there were 15 reported rape cases reported. And in Douglas County, where there were 11 reported rape cases, both of those counties have banned prostitution. In Rhode Island, the only other state to have legalized sex work, only temporarily though, from 1980 to 2009 when it was recriminalized. A study found that during the period of decriminalization in Rhode Island, prostitution arrests decreased and there was a 31% decrease in per capita rape offenses. Now, the AMARC Foundation found several different studies showing that legalization and decriminalization of sex work would not increase crime rates. Those 7 studies. A working paper by the National Bureau of Economic Research studying the impact of the decriminalization of indoor prostitution in Rhode Island between 1980 and 2009 found that during that period of decriminalization, prostitution arrests decreased, and there was a 31% decrease per capita rape offenses, which I just cited. A study published by the Independent Institute concluded that if prostitution were legalized in the United States, the overall rape rate would decrease by approximately 25,000 rapes per year, or 25%. A peer-reviewed study by academic researchers in the Netherlands found that the opening of legal street prostitution zones in participating Dutch cities led to a 30 to 40% decrease in reported sexual abuse and rape within the first 2 years of opening. When a legal street prostitution zone with additional licensing was opened, significant reductions in drug-related crime and long-term effects on sexual assault were also found. As recently as 2019, a comparative study of the sex industries in mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, where prostitution is illegal, partly legal, i.e. prostitution is legal, but organizing prostitution is illegal, and legal since 2011, respectively, found that there was no significant difference in the rate of reported rape cases per 100,000 people between China and Hong Kong. In Taiwan, however, the number of reported rape cases decreased significantly post-legalization of prostitution. A peer-reviewed study published in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence looking into the risks of interpersonal violence against prostitutes, violence against community order, and sexually transmitted diseases as violence in Nevada found that legalization of prostitution brings a level of public scrutiny, official regulation, and bureaucratization to brothels that decrease the risk of these 3 types of systemic violence. The process to decriminalize prostitution in South Wales, Australia, started in 1979 with the adoption of the Prostitution Act 1979 that decriminalized soliciting alongside the offense of being a reputed prostitute on premises habitually used for prostitution. And accumulated in the Disorderly Houses Amendment Act of 1995 that decriminalized brothel prostitution. In 2012, a study published by the University of New South Wales concluded that these laws have improved human rights, removed police corruption, netted savings for the criminal justice system, and enhanced surveillance, health promotion, and safety of the sex work industry. They also found no evidence of recent trafficking of female sex workers in Sydney's brothels. A peer-reviewed study from New Zealand noted that decriminalized sex workers are safer and have more rights than sex workers did pre-decriminalization and compared to those working elsewhere under criminalizing regimes. Now, I would be disingenuous if I didn't offer up that there have also been studies that found mixed results. Those also can be found very easily on the internet. I'm not going to highlight those now. And that's a part of science, is it depends on how the study is conducted, where it's conducted, etc. I think, though, the argument could be made that it's worth considering to legalize or decriminalize sex work, or at the very least, provide safe methods by which sex work is conducted. And I would bring you back to the figures that I told you about earlier, where it's reported that 50% of serial killers' victims historically are sex workers. Food for thought. As with anything else, I'm always going to advocate for more research as needed. Being someone that lives in Nevada and has for a very long time, perhaps I have a bias towards the legalization or decriminalization of sex work. Like I've said on my channel a number of times, sexology is about management. We look at how to manage a problem. Is the problem of sex work and crime and violence and drug abuse manageable through legalization or decriminalization? Does it create a safer space for sex workers to do their work, irrespective of your moral leanings? How do we reduce harm? How do we reduce harm in light of the fact that 50% of prostitutes are murdered by serial killers? Serial killers their go-to 50% of the time is sex workers, illegal sex workers. So it continues to be my position that harm reduction comes first. Harm reduction to those who choose to be in the sex industry, whether it's testing, create a safe space for them to screen clients, a safe space for them to conduct their work. Harm reduction, in my view, should be at the forefront of this question. With that, I will leave you today. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Just a Tip / Sex Nerd Podcast. In the next coming weeks, I'll make announcements about what's coming up at the museum. We have one more big exhibit going in this year, and then the next big one is next August of 2024. I'm super excited for that one. It's going to mix controversial art and music, and it's just going to be a really cool grand opening. With that, I will see you back here next time on Just a Tip with Dr. Vic, Sex Nerd Podcast. Bye.